Cluster 6 of the local questionnaire focuses on legal remedy, including access to both formal and informal judicial mechanisms and access to legal aid, for example, in the form of advice and representation. Some of the human rights that are central to this cluster include the right to an effective remedy, the right to be equal before courts and tribunals, equality before the law and entitlement without discrimination to equal protection of the law, and also the right to legal aid is essential for the enjoyment of other rights, particularly the right to a fair trial. All of these rights are enshrined in the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which is binding on states that have ratified the instrument. The right to remedy can be broken down in different elements. The first one being equal and effective access to justice. The second being adequate, effective and prompt reparation, which in land rights cases could include return, restitution, resettlement, rehabilitation and compensation. And also access to relevant information concerning justice processes and mechanisms. The right to formally challenge public decisions is an important element of access to justice and accountability and the right to remedy, and such challenges could be in the form of an appeal, for example. There is a lot of human rights guidance on what constitutes fair and adequate compensation. For example, when assessing damages, it's important that lost opportunities, including employment, education, and social benefits, are factored in. And also not only material damages, but also loss of earnings, including loss of earning potential. So if a farmer was expecting to generate income from a plot of land, also in the future, that should be factored in. Costs required for legal or expert assistance, and many other factors. And some of these details can be found in the Committee of Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, General Comment 7, and then more elaborated principles and guidelines from the Special Rapporteur on Adequate Housing. Furthermore, where land has been taken, the evicted should be compensated with land that is the same quality, size and value or better. No one must be left worse off after an eviction. Cash compensation should under no circumstances replace real compensation in the form of land and common property resources. All of those evicted, irrespective of whether they hold title to their property, should be entitled to compensation. And this is an important point to emphasize because often those who do not have formal titles documenting their land rights are left out when it comes to paying out compensation. Women and men must be co-beneficiaries of all compensation packages, and single women and widows should be entitled to their own compensation. These points are from the basic principles and guidelines on development-based evictions developed by the Special Rapporteur on Adequate Housing. In the online version of the local questionnaire, I'll click on Cluster 6, Access to Justice and Reparations and the Right to Remedy. Note that the first questions concern whether the respondents has tried to bring a case and seek legal remedy in the last couple of years, and this relates to the formal judicial system. So, for example, whether the respondents have tried to take a case to court and whether they were able to access legal support, for example, advice and representation, whether they faced any barriers, and please provide the details, whether they received any sort of redress, restitution or compensation related to cases of displacement, eviction or relocation. Please provide details here. Whether the perpetrators were sanctioned by the formal judicial system. And then when we get down here, we ask about whether they have tried to bring cases to informal or customary dispute resolution mechanisms. So this is different from the questions about the formal system, and it could relate to, for example, local councils of elders or customary forms of dispute resolution mechanisms, and whether the conflict was satisfactorily resolved through these mechanisms. Please provide more details in the free text field here to describe the case.